Okay, what is the single most important issue you would address immediately after taking office, and how would you address it?
So I'm going to champion making sure that this port stays as a national security treasure. I'm going to champion that we bring new businesses here to grow our economy, because we can't pay for our security or our defense or border security unless we have a strong economy. So because of the difference in our philosophies and because of Mr. Barber's record, I have the National Federation of Independent Business, who's behind me. The National Home Builders are behind me. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce behind me. The Associated Builders and Contractors, General Contractors, the Restaurant Association, everybody who cares about the economy has looked at his record and looked at my record and my philosophy, and they're behind me in this race.
Okay, what is the single most important issue you would address immediately after taking office, and how would you address it?
Well, I believe that the most important issue facing all of Southern Arizona, there are specific issues facing certain segments, is the economy and jobs. We obviously have a huge problem in our country. The recovery has not been fast enough. But since I went to Congress as a former small business owner with my wife for 22 years, I've taken the knowledge of small business, what it takes to operate, to make a profit, to keep the doors open. I've taken that to the Small Business Committee, where we have already passed legislation out of that committee to deregulate small businesses, to increase access to capital. Before we left the recess, I voted for a jobs bill that passed the House. Hopefully it'll pass the Senate. But we also have to hold on to what we've got. We have to grow jobs, and we have to keep what we've got. And that's why I fought from day one to lead the charge to make sure that Fort Huachuca did not lose the personnel that were proposed. 2,700 positions? No way. We're going to fight to save the fort, and we've already done some work on that. And then finally, I want to say, APCO is a very important part of its community. It's a power plant near Wilcox and Benson. It employs 252 people. In the audience tonight, we have a representative from APCO, Jeff Wolfather. I have worked with the plant to make sure that the one-size-fits-all mentality of the EPA does not prevail in Cochise County. We pushed back when they said they were going to make APCO increase its technology to reduce regional haze by spending $200 million. That's absurd. We pushed back, and now we have a win-win situation where we're going to spend a lot less money to get even better results, and we've saved 250 jobs in this great community. 250 high-paying jobs in a rural area is critical, and that's part of the fight. Keep what you've got and grow what you can. And working with the University of Arizona, I've been working to bring laboratory innovations to market through Tech Launch Arizona. We are going to bring the Arizona economy back by keeping what we have and growing what we need to grow, and I'm determined to make that happen when I go back to Washington.
You've been in Congress 3 years, and people are hurting now more than ever. If we ask the question, are you better off than you were 3 years ago, the answer is definitely no. And I don't know about you, but the extreme agenda coming out of the Obama administration, Nancy Pelosi, who you voted for Speaker, and the EPA in overreaching in our communities related to this regional haze, I don't consider a $30 million bill a win-win. A $30 million cost is what's happened because of the EPA about particles that we can't even see and are not harmful to our health. And by the way, that compromise is up till 2017, but the new EPA rules will shut down that plant in 2020. This is the extreme radical agenda coming out of your party's administration, and the EPA will shut down that plant in 2020. Go do the research. I know you got a commercial coming out talking about how you're saving these jobs, but $30 million is too much for us to pay here when we're already hurting in Southern Arizona. So I'm going to fight to roll the EPA back so we have $0 being spent because we're taking care of it ourselves.
What is, in your opinion, the biggest hurdle to the economic recovery in our district? And how are you going to tackle it? That goes to Mr. Barber.
Well, it's a number of things, Phil, not just one single thing. First of all, we have to invest more in our education system so we can produce the educated and skilled workforce that companies need to come to Arizona. They will come if we have the workers. And we have neglected education in this state. My opponent, unfortunately, has said the federal government has no role to play in education. I disagree. $2.5 million of federal money that comes back to the state from the Department of Ed, that's important to advance education. But let me just go back for a moment to my opponent's comment about Pelosi. Love to talk about Pelosi. I don't take my advice from Nancy Pelosi. There's only one Nancy in my life that I take advice from, and that's she's sitting in front of Nancy Barber. You know, that kind of mud throwing is really out of line. I have voted against the leadership over and over and over again. Nancy Pelosi doesn't care too much for me, but back to the economy. We need to have public education better. We need to bring jobs into the high-tech arena. We already have a foundation with solar, with optics, with bioscience, and the University of Arizona. When I was in Israel last year, I worked with the high-tech companies to attract them to begin startups here in Arizona at the Research Park near the University of Arizona. And right now, we think there are going to be 11 new companies that could be coming here. There'll be another visit to Israel later this year. They're on their way to build their businesses here. We need to attract both local capital and capital from elsewhere. And that's how we're going to help grow this economy. Capital is the biggest problem getting in the way of the growth of small businesses. Small businesses represent 70% of the economy in this country. If we don't help them by taking away regulations, if we don't help them by giving them access to capital, we are not going to regrow this economy. And that's been my job and my role since I went to Congress and joined the Small Business Committee. As a former business owner, I know how to do this. Unfortunately, my opponent has no experience in business. She wouldn't necessarily know how to do it.
The biggest hurdle to the economic recovery in this district, and what would you do to tackle it?
Well, I think the biggest hurdle is Washington, D.C., actually. So that includes Congress not doing its job, and that includes federal agencies that are actually on the backs of small businesses. So small businesses do create 7 to 10 jobs. And it's great that you're on that committee, Ron, but the organizations that represent small business have looked at your record and decided to get behind you. And so if you look, I had a small business roundtable when NFIB came down to endorse me a couple weeks ago, and members of the community sat around a table and talked to me about the problems that they're having related to the federal government. And there's overreach on every front. Whether it was Dodd-Frank, which is actually strangulating the housing industry, and people not being able to get access to capital and loans. I refinanced my own house on a VA loan last year, and the paperwork got like 5 times as more before. It's ridiculous. It's not helping. It's actually hurting the housing industry. Whether it's the Affordable Care Act, which is anything but affordable, and it's hurting businesses because they're laying people off and putting them as part-time workers, and it's not giving them the ability and the confidence to grow. Right now, Washington, D.C. isn't doing their job of passing a budget and 12 appropriations bills every year. Congress's basic job to do that. The last time they did that, I think, was about 18 years ago. And what they do is create uncertainty in the economy so that people don't know whether they should hire or grow, or even if they've got capital, whether they should invest it. So we've got to get Washington, D.C. back to work. If there's no budget and no appropriations bills, you shouldn't be getting your pay, Ron, you and your other fellow members. They got to do their job, and then get out of the way and stop being on the backs with their extreme agendas and the overreach of agencies so that businesses can grow and thrive and prosper.
My job as a member of Congress, and I've been doing it since I got there, and even before as district director for Gavin Giffords, is to push back on those federal agencies that want to have a one-size-fits-all strategy. It doesn't work. They've never even been out to the Southwest. They don't know who we are and what we are here. So we've been fighting really hard on behalf of APCO. That was a victory. Ask the workers at APCO if that wasn't a victory to save that plant, 252 jobs. I think they would say it is. And secondly, as far as the new APA rules are concerned, I don't agree with those. And I have pushed hard to make sure that APCO is at the table. They were at the table in Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago. It's arguing why it shouldn't happen here. And let me just remind you, my opponent, who is in charge of the House of Representatives. It's your party. They haven't brought bills to the floor. Who shut down the government? Not me. Your party shut down